The words were hidden in plain sight, scattered throughout the evening like breadcrumbs leading to a truth too painful for anyone to recognize in real time. June 26, 1977. Market Square Arena, Indianapolis. Elvis Presley walked onto the stage for what would be the final performance of his life, carrying secrets that he would reveal to 18,000 fans who had no idea they were witnessing a farewell. To the audience, it was just another Elvis concert in what seemed like an endless string of successful tours. The king was back in his element, commanding the stage with the charisma and vocal power that had made him the most famous entertainer on earth. But for those who knew how to listen, Elvis spent that entire evening saying goodbye. Not obviously. Not in a way that would have caused panic or sadness among the fans who had traveled from across the Midwest to see him perform. Instead, Elvis embedded his farewell in song choices, in comments between numbers, in gestures and expressions that seemed routine but carried the weight of finality. Charlie Hodge, Elvis's longtime friend and backing vocalist, would later say that he sensed something different about Elvis that night from the moment he walked into the venue for soundcheck. There was a stillness about him, a sense of someone who had made peace with something the rest of them didn't understand. He kept looking around the arena like he was trying to memorize it. Charlie remembered. He'd done that at other venues before, but this felt different, like he was saying goodbye to more than just another concert hall. The signs had been building for weeks. Elvis's health had been deteriorating rapidly, his weight fluctuating dramatically, his energy levels unpredictable. But more troubling to those closest to him was his increasing tendency toward what they could only describe as philosophical reflection. He had begun talking about death not with fear, but with a kind of curious acceptance that unsettled even his closest friends. He spoke about his mother, who had died 19 years earlier, as if she were waiting for him somewhere just out of reach. He talked about being tired in ways that sleep couldn't cure. Most concerning was how he had begun treating familiar routines as if he were experiencing them for the last time. He spent longer than usual in prayer before shows. He lingered over conversations with band members and crew. He seemed to be cataloging memories, storing up experiences like someone preparing for a long journey. Dr. George Nikopoulos, Elvis's personal physician, had noticed changes in Elvis's behavior that went beyond physical symptoms. The man who had always lived intensely in the present moment had begun dwelling on the past and speaking about the future in ways that suggested he didn't expect to be part of it. He started talking about his legacy. Dr. Nick later recalled, not in an egotistical way, but like someone who was genuinely concerned about how he would be remembered. He wanted to make sure he hadn't wasted the gifts he'd been given. The Indianapolis concert was scheduled as a routine stop on what was supposed to be a lengthy summer tour. Elvis had performed there many times before, and the venue held no special significance in his career. But what transpired that evening would transform Market Square Arena into a pilgrimage site for Elvis fans around the world. The first hint that this wasn't an ordinary concert came during Elvis's opening remarks. Instead of his usual energetic greeting, he stood center stage and spoke directly to the audience with unusual gravity. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know how much it means to me that you came here tonight. Some of you have been with me since the beginning, and that kind of loyalty, well, that's something a man never forgets." The comment seemed typical of Elvis's genuine appreciation for his fans, but his delivery carried a weight that made several people in the audience exchange glances. This didn't sound like routine stage patter. This sounded like someone expressing gratitude for a lifetime of support. Elvis opened the concert with C.C. Rider, but even his choice of opener carried significance for those who understood his catalog. The song was one of his earliest hits, a link back to the beginning of his career when everything was possible and nothing was certain. As he performed, Elvis seemed to be drawing energy not just from the audience response but from the songs themselves, as if he were revisiting old friends one final time. His voice was strong that night, his movements purposeful, but there was something elegiac about his presence that transformed entertainment into something approaching memorial. The song selection throughout the evening would later be analyzed by fans and music historians as a carefully constructed journey through Elvis's entire career. He performed early hits that recalled his breakthrough years, ballads that showcased his mature vocal abilities, and gospel songs that revealed his spiritual core. But it was between songs that Elvis revealed most clearly what was happening. His usual stage banter was replaced by reflections that seemed intended for posterity rather than immediate entertainment. After performing "Love Me Tender," Elvis walked to the edge of the stage and spoke directly to the audience with an intimacy that made 18,000 people feel like they were having a private conversation. "You know, that song reminds me of my mama. She loved that one. She used to say it was the first song where she heard the man I was becoming instead of the boy she'd raised. I hope wherever she is now, she knows I tried to become the man she wanted me to be. The comment brought tears to many eyes, but it also revealed something about Elvis's state of mind. He was speaking about his life in past tense, evaluating his choices and their consequences, like someone preparing a final accounting. Halfway through the concert, during a costume change, Elvis did something unprecedented. Instead of leaving the stage, he remained visible to the audience and spoke about what performing had meant to him. "I've been doing this for more than 20 years now," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the arena sound system. "And every single night, I learned something new about music, about people, about what it means to connect with strangers through songs." He paused, looking around the arena as if trying to memorize every face, every section, every detail. "I want you all to know that these moments right here, right now, these are the moments that make everything else worthwhile. The music, the travel, the craziness of this life, it's all been worth it because of nights like tonight, because of people like you." The audience responded with sustained applause, but many later said they felt like they were witnessing something more significant than typical performer audience appreciation. This felt like someone expressing final gratitude. Elvis's performance of How Great Thou Art that evening was particularly powerful, showcasing the gospel roots that had always anchored his musical identity. But his interpretation carried a spiritual intensity that transcended entertainment and entered the realm of personal testimony. As he sang about God's love and eternal salvation, Elvis seemed to be singing not just for the audience but for himself, working through questions about mortality and meaning that had been weighing on him for months. "When I look down from lofty mountain grandeur and hear the brook and feel the gentle breeze," the lyrics took on new meaning in Elvis's voice, as if he were describing a place he could see clearly, a destination he was approaching rather than simply imagining. The most revealing moment of the evening came during My Way, the Frank Sinatra song that Elvis had made his own through performances that turned it from a statement of defiance into a meditation on choices and consequences. But that night in Indianapolis, My Way became something else entirely. A final accounting of a life lived in the public eye, a summary of decisions made under impossible circumstances, an acknowledgement of both triumphs and regrets. "I did it my way." When Elvis sang those final words, his voice carried a finality that made several audience members feel like they were witnessing the end of something important. Not just the end of a song, but the end of an era. The concert's climactic moment came during Elvis's performance of Can't Help Falling in Love, the song that had become his signature closing number. But instead of performing it with his usual romantic charm, Elvis transformed it into something approaching a hymn. He sang it slowly, deliberately, his voice filled with emotion that seemed to encompass everything he had experienced in his 42 years of life. The lyrics about falling in love became a metaphor for falling in love with life itself, for embracing the beauty and pain of human experience even when you know it must end. "Take my hand, take my whole life too." As Elvis sang those words, he extended his hands toward the audience as if he were literally offering everything he had to give. The gesture was so powerful, so laden with meaning, that many people in the audience found themselves crying without understanding why. When the song ended, Elvis stood center stage in the spotlight, breathing heavily, his arms hanging at his sides. For nearly 30 seconds, he simply looked at the audience, his expression encompassing gratitude, sadness, and something that could only be described as peace. Then he spoke the words that would haunt everyone who heard them. "Thank you. You've been a wonderful audience. I love you all. Good night." The words themselves were routine, the kind of closing remarks Elvis had made at thousands of concerts throughout his career. But his delivery was different, final, complete. He didn't say his usual "thank you very much" or "see you next time." He said good night with the gravity of someone who knew there would be no next time. Elvis left the stage that evening and never returned to it. 42 days later, on August 16, 1977, Elvis Presley died at Graceland, and suddenly every moment from the Indianapolis concert took on new significance. The philosophical reflections, the careful song selection, the final words, they all revealed themselves as pieces of a farewell that had been carefully constructed but artfully concealed. Charlie Hodge spent years analyzing that final performance, trying to understand how much Elvis had known about what was coming, and how much had been intuitive recognition that his time was ending. He knew, Charlie finally concluded, maybe not consciously, maybe not specifically, but somewhere deep down he knew that Indianapolis was goodbye. That's why every song felt like a gift, every word felt like a benediction. The fans who attended that final concert often described feeling like they had witnessed something sacred, though they couldn't articulate what made it different from other Elvis performances. Only in retrospect did they understand that they had been present for a masterfully crafted farewell, a final gift from an artist who wanted to say goodbye properly even if he couldn't say it directly. Market Square Arena became an unofficial shrine for Elvis fans, with thousands making pilgrimages to the venue where the king had performed his final show. Many described feeling Elvis's presence there as if something of his spirit remained in the place where he had said goodbye. The venue was demolished in 2001, but not before fans gathered to save pieces of the stage where Elvis had performed his final concert. Those fragments became treasured relics, physical connections to the night when Elvis Presley said goodbye to the world that had loved him. Dr. Nikopoulos later reflected that the Indianapolis concert represented Elvis at his most spiritually evolved, a man who had found peace with his mortality and wanted to share that peace with the people who had supported him throughout his remarkable journey. He went out on his own terms, Dr. Nick observed. Not as a victim of his circumstances, but as an artist who understood that even endings could be beautiful if approached with the right spirit. The hidden farewell at Market Square Arena became part of Elvis's legend, proof that even in his final moments as a performer, he was thinking about his audience, caring for their feelings, protecting them from the sadness of explicit goodbye while still honoring their relationship with the gratitude it deserved. Elvis's last concert was not a tragic ending but a graceful completion, the work of an artist who understood that how you leave is as important as how you arrive, and that the greatest gift you can give people who love you is the assurance that their love was received, appreciated, and returned. In saying goodbye without saying goodbye, Elvis protected his fans from the pain of knowing they were witnessing the end while ensuring they received the closure they would need in the difficult days ahead. The final words, "Thank you, you've been a wonderful audience. I love you all. Good night," became Elvis's epitaph, a perfect summary of a career built on gratitude, connection, and love for the people who had made his extraordinary life possible. Sometimes the most powerful farewells are the ones that don't announce themselves. The ones that wrap goodbye in gifts so beautiful that the sadness doesn't arrive until later, when love has had time to prepare for loss. Elvis Presley's final performance was not the end of his story. It was the completion of his promise to always give his audience everything he had to give, right up until the very last note.